everyone, and welcome to Tabernacle Township Committee meeting for February 25th, 2019. Please stand for a flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have sunshine notice. This meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of February 25th, 2019 was sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and the Courier Post. Posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall and has remained continuously posted as required notices under statute. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. We have roll call. Ms. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Yates? Mayor Barton?
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to public comment on agenda items only. Please come down here so we can record you. Give us your name and address, and at the 3-minute mark, I will let you know your 3 minutes are up, and you'll have a few seconds to close out your remarks. Anyone would like to make comments on agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Approval of the bills.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance on first reading, 2019-1, amending Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 12 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Tabernacle. Public hearing will be March 25th, 2019 at 7 p.m. Motion?
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. Brown made the motion. Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-42, approve the change order number 1 for the 2018 drainage improvements coastline construction. And we have a motion and a second, and then we'll have Mr. Kramer explain it to us. So, Mr. Guzzi.
I'll make the motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Doug or Dan, would you like to explain?
Yeah, these are a combination of things, including some quantity adjustments and some additional work that we added to the project on Zimmerman Road. So we extended the piping and the inlets a little bit further because of the sheer amount of water that was on that road. We thought that was warranted, and working with Doug, we decided to add a little bit of work there. So again, it's a combination of that work and then some quantity adjustments for a net total of a little over $19,000.
Any questions of our engineer?
Dan, did you have any right-of-way issues on that?
We did not.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-43, authorize the cancellation of property taxes for parcels owned by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. We have a motion.
I'll make the motion.
A second. Okay, I'll second it. So these involve block 1302, lot 65, block 1302, lot 69, and block 1601, lot 7. Do you want to explain?
This is property that used to belong to the Cuss Brothers that was located off of Arts Causeway towards Goose Pond on the south side of Route 532 that has been purchased by the state of New Jersey and added into Wharton State Forest.
North side.
North side, excuse me.
Yes.
They're actually purchased by the state. Purchased by the state.
Any questions? Okay, roll call.
Ms. Brown?
No, I'm good.
Was that
Ms.
a
Brown, was
yes?
that a yes or no?
I'm sorry, yes, yes,
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-44, authorized submission of a strategic plan for Tabernacle Municipal Alliance Grant for fiscal year 2020.
so moved,
Second?
Second.
So this grant is for
The municipal,
$12,212?
yes. Norring Pond. Cash match and the Norring Pond for the volunteer labor.
Any questions?
We've had some, we have had some pushback on this every couple of years or so. Is there any reason to think that, well, first of all, we heard more pushback. And is there any reason to change the course moving forward with the municipal grant, or the municipal alliance grant, I should say?
They've had a new director at the county level for the last couple of years. I believe they've worked out the changes that they require, and that the pushback from the county and concern has been less as the years go by, and they've gotten into agreement of what programs and how the programs have to run.
Are they going to change directors with the new administration, or what's their, it's like a revolving door up there?
I do not know that.
Any other questions? Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
yes,
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-45, authorize acceptance of award money for the fiscal year 18 EMMA grant. A motion?
so moved,
Second?
Second.
Mr. Sudbury, do you want to comment on this?
That's a, sirs, and Ms. Brown, that's a continuing resolution for the Emergency Management Performance Grant, which sets benchmarks for optimal running of your emergency management program within the township. So it specifies training and activity requirements, things that we do to make sure that we have a top-notch emergency management program, and they reimburse us up to 50% of $20,000 in salary expenses by participating in this grant. So free money for the township if we just do our jobs right. Thank you.
Any questions of our emergency management coordinator?
For the record, that was Robert Sunbury,
Thank you.
emergency management coordinator, just safety coordinator.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown? Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-46, authorize a refund pursuant to a 100% filled disabled veteran exemption.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
yes,
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to authorize authorization to conduct aerial larva adult mosquito control activities.
So moved.
Second?
second,
Doug, you want
This is the same annual program that the Broughton County Mosquito Division of the Health Department and Public Works provide all of the municipalities. This is their standard form to authorize so they can advertise and come in and do both larva spraying, aerial and ground, and also adult size when it is needed. So, it's the same form we've done every year.
For the spring, Doug.
That they tell me when they get here.
They don't,
Depends on which they're doing. Barb is a different material than that, and they'll give me the MSDS sheets.
yeah, it's still innocuous to both. Unfortunately, this is not, and it's not the county's fault, it's not our fault, but the material that we have to use, the county uses, does not do as much as it could or should. It's not our fault, and it's not the county's fault, it's kind of just the way it goes.
What the attorneys will let them spread.
What's that?
That's what the attorneys will let them spread.
Yeah, well, it's part of it.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Motion for parade permit for the South Jersey Enduro Riders, Inc., the Curly Fern Enduro, March 24th, 2019.
I make the motion.
Second?
Second.
We have another map other than this one that was in the packet. It's easy to read. No?
I see Mr. Cutts here, if anyone has any questions of Mr. Cutts on the parade permit. Gary, you have any comments on the parade permit?
It's Gary Cutts, Coran's Road. It's, we're almost using the identical course that we've used for the last half a dozen years. We're pretty much tied, our hands are tied with the Finance Commission and everything. And it's the 51st annual, so look forward to it.
Thanks, Gary.
Gary, is there any chance you can get us a different map next year? One that's, I guess my point is that it's hard to have an idea where it's.
Every exact route.
Yeah, it's not as exact as it could be, and it's not, you're doing it, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but my point is if we could get one that's a little bit easier to understand more so to the public, so they have an idea where the roads are. Next year, it doesn't need to be this year. I know where you're going, but it's more so for the, if it gets opened, for the public to look at, that's all.
Would a larger version of this suffice, or
Yeah, that would work, because then people can
or
come and look
I
at
just
it.
want to know what to tell the trail boss or the guy that lays this out. He does it on computer.
Right.
GIS
Yeah, that would
or I don't know.
Or even a Google map. Well, a Google map's not going to show all the roads, but.
Something that gives us the road, the woods trails that you're near.
You can just take the GPX file that they're already using and just zoom in.
Okay, just make it a little more detailed on what it is.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay.
But also helpful for the guy sitting behind you too, so he understands what's.
Yeah, and I can have him send, or I can drop off a larger version of it. You know.
Okay. Bob, did you get this?
Yes, I did.
And you're familiar with where they're going?
I reviewed both the permits for tonight and reviewed where they go and minimal impact to the township.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions?
No.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Motion for parade permit, Pine Barrens Indoor Riders, TBER Clock Run, April 14th, 2019.
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Any discussion?
Good.
How was that, Matt, Stephen?
Yeah, same thing. The map, this one's actually even tougher to tell, so maybe we could get them to do the same exact thing.
Did you
That
hear-
map's pure black and white, but
Did you take care of that, Gary? Did you hear the
It's not
comments?
Gary.
that's not
Oh, that's not your run.
Yeah.
Keith, does this go down,
I'll reach out to the applicant.
I can pass that
Oh, that's the
information on
plan,
too.
too.
do we have a first and second?
Kim and Sam, yes.
Pete, does this go down to, does this go down to Jones's Mill and then also go down to 563?
I'm not familiar with the route.
Okay,
I would only be able to look at the map as well,
okay.
but I know that there are more detailed
Looks
maps
at-
available. They're provided for the park police and for the emergency services. They're readily available to the club, so it's not going to be a problem.
Okay. Yeah, if we can get one that's a little bit better than that, that'd be great. That's all I have.
Okay, so the approval's contingent of a better map, so
we don't need one this year, I don't think. At least I'm not that bent out of shape about it, but just moving forward, we ought to have a more detailed map that is easy to understand.
okay.
I recognize we do it every year, but we ought to have a map that on record here that is accessible to the public to be able to review.
Okay, roll call?
Ms. Brown?
yes,
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay. New business items will be added to our workshop agenda, which will be next month. Stephen, what we did at the workshop meeting, we basically sat around the table and everyone brought their suggestions and ideas of what they wanted to have on agenda for 2019. So I would ask you and Joe when present for the next workshop. Bring your thoughts, ideas. We do have in the packet everything that was discussed. And then from there, we'll prioritize it and build a consensus of how we're going to move forward in 2019.
I would suggest you communicate that to Joe individually.
Okay.
But I did review Sean actually got me the packets on Friday. I did take a look at them, and I did have some stuff to add to it. There were a couple of questions I had regarding progress and where we are on a couple of things. One was court, one was the Harris Causeway situation. I saw that was on the sheet. Do we have an update on that at this point?
Eric's Causeway.
Yeah.
The clerk has to go out to bid, as has been the case for a while, go out to bid for the professional services of an appraiser. And I know that she indicated that we would have that out in advance of the workshop and it would be on the agenda. So yeah, we spoke about that specifically, and the next step is to get the appraiser out there. The RFQ for that is on its way, and we would have had it for tonight's meeting, but I think it was listed for the next agenda.
So are we going to be able to conduct business at the workshop meetings, or how we? What's our plan moving forward?
Okay, at the workshop, the plan is to just pay some bills if we have bills, and then just discuss the agenda moving forward and any open items, and see if we can bring them to closure and move forward, and whatever action items need to take place to close out whatever items we prioritize.
How are we doing public comment for those types of meetings?
Okay, the public comment is after the workshop, after we have discussed those items, because there's no set agenda for the public to comment on beforehand, so there's no public comment before the meeting.
Okay.
But there is before the close of the meeting.
Okay. Okay. So we can take action if we want to take action.
Yes.
Limits us from doing
Yes,
that.
because there is public comment.
If I could ask one more question, and it's on the tip of my tongue. Where do we stand with Woodland Township and county court?
We've been advertising for deputy court administrator. That closed on Friday. We will now set up a time to do the interviews. The county court office has to be part of the interview process, and we'll get that scheduled for probably in about 2 weeks, whenever we can put together the schedule.
So we have the approval from Bergen County yet?
What we have is a tentative approval to move forward and do the advertisement for the deputy court administrator, and once we go through that process, then we determine to Judge Bookbinder what we've made as a determination, and then we'll get our approval from there.
So there's the likelihood that, at TV's nice, the likelihood of them backing out of that is pretty low. They're giving us preliminary approval, essentially we're going to get it.
They've given us preliminary approval as of right now, pending our ability to find a deputy court administrator.
Okay.
So if we find a deputy court administrator that's willing to work the minimum time that they've required, then I don't see where our next hurdle is.
I don't either.
So that's just where it's at.
Unless something crazy happens. But I hope it doesn't.
So the intent is to try to, before the bookbinder leaves, since he started this process, he wants to finish it.
Good.
So
Good. That's awesome. Mayor, the only two things I wanted to just add to the wish list per se that the committee and public, I guess, had put together 2 weeks ago. And maybe I missed it, but there were intersections to address the issues here at the four-way stop here in front of Town Hall and also Seneca High School. We've had a lot of public comment over the years in terms of concerns specifically regarding the Seneca High School piece. And when I was mayor in 2013, met with members from Lenape Regional as well as the county engineering office. And Lenape had actually put together a study for that particular intersection. So I think getting that, I have no idea where that stands at this point.
Okay.
I know that, I think you were meeting with Joe Brickley at one point last year. I'm not even sure where that ended up. Bob Sunbury actually had mentioned to me at the tree lighting that we were going to be getting the intersection done this summer. So getting some ideas about where we are with the intersection here in front and also down at Seneca are two things that I think ought to be addressed or at least dealt with. And we need to tell residents that we're not going to be doing anything with that intersection in the front, where it's in front of Seneca. We need to at least continue the dialogue with the county as long as Joe Brookley's still there, until he gets let go.
Yeah, Stephen, you are correct. Doug and I did meet with Joe Brickley last year, and the county does still have a plan for a roundabout at this intersection that they want to fund with county money, and they are working with Lenape for realigning the driveways with Hawkins Road. Is that correct, Doug?
That's correct.
And put another roundabout down there.
Yes,
And
that's a federal.
That's a grant from the Delaware Valley Planning Commission?
Yeah, through the federal grant.
It's a federal grant.
So do we have an actual time on the intersection front?
We did not. He did not give us the time. The freeholders didn't commit to when they were going to fully fund it.
Yes.
And of course, there's a change of freeholder board, so
We have
we'll
no
have to
idea.
revisit.
So we have, that could be, it may or may not be a priority for the
Yeah,
freeholder.
so you're right. It needs to go on the agenda for 2019, and we need to follow up on that.
Okay.
Anything else you want?
That's all I have for right now.
Okay.
I've got more to come certainly,
good.
but I wanted, I had two questions, those two items that I brought up, and then also the
Okay.
intersection.
Yeah, we have, we pretty much, we all put lists together, and a lot of them were cross-pollinated. They were similar in many respects. It was just a matter of closing out what we've had in the past and thinking about some things for the future. Okay, we're going to go to reports. Mr. Guzzi?
Really, the only thing new we're working on is the continue to work on a stormwater management plan, working with Doug to address the state's comments at their inspection last month, and with Peter to review our stormwater management rules to see if there's any changes that may be required, and if so, we would bring them up to the workshop meeting next month.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dave. Mr. Kramer?
Just what I have is, for the workshop meeting next month, we need to talk about the road program and funding. We have the funding, we just need to move forward on assigning the roads and giving the approval for Dan to start on the project. The other thing we're going to have is we are probably going to have to talk about addressing boarding houses in town. We'll work with Pete on getting some of that preliminary stuff done. And that's all I have for now.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
A few things, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I did speak with Dan's office, and we will work to address his concerns regarding stormwater basement inspection and maintenance. We do have a full-blown stormwater water ordinance on the books. It's heavily tied to the approval process, whether it be site plan or subdivision, and the enforcement is through the agreements that would have been conditions of those approvals. If there are other issues regarding a township right of inspection or otherwise, we'll discuss that and come up with some solutions and make some suggestions at the workshop. Also at the workshop, we talked about raising the weight limit associated with the commercial gross weight of vehicles be able to be parked in residential zones. You introduced that on first reading tonight. from 12,000 to 17,500. So hopefully have a meaningful discussion on that at the workshop and list that for a final hearing. Also discussed at the workshop was the special events ordinance. I did provide it, forwarded it to LaShawn again, asked her to distribute it again to the committee so that we can hopefully have a meaningful discussion on what was the last version. The most recent version is what's been recirculated, which took into a lot of comments made by Mr. Lee and otherwise. So again, I'll attempt to facilitate a meaningful discussion aimed at listing that for first reading at the regular meeting after the next workshop. And other than that, I'll save my time for executive session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Committeeman Lee?
Did we get public comment on the items you just referenced that are at the last workshop meeting?
Well, there's public comment at the end of the meeting. Some of the comments were on some of those items.
Okay, so I guess my point is that when an item comes up during the workshop meeting, there's public comment at the end of that, so the committee has an opportunity to be able to hear the public comments regarding those agenda items, and then they would theoretically go to a meeting for a future date.
For this regular meeting.
So the public's had an opportunity to be able to comment, you make changes or whatever. Okay, good. I'm going to pass to Sam and then ask to come back because there's,
Okay.
I think you're ready to know.
Committeeman Ward?
Okay, just three quick things. I attended the newly elected officials seminar held by the League of Municipalities back in late January. Very, very good seminar. Met a lot of folks. Never seen so many elected officials in one place in my life as that. So that was very interesting. I've learned a lot from that. Good seminar to go to. Went to another seminar with Bob Sunbury with Emergency Management and Doug involving sheltering back in, I think it was early February, I believe, going over some stuff for our township. And also getting to rescue services. Had our first discussion with Bob Sunbury, Chief Jackson, and Chief Smith back on the 18th we met and started going over, rescue training, working together, trying to make it work together in unison. And a lot of good dialogue, not to get in a big discussion about it, a lot of good dialogue from both chiefs, very professional. Did a fantastic job of trying to put a plan together of moving forward. There's already some dates set that they're working on getting together to start to get the two companies together. So I'm proud to see the way that's going. That's all I had today.
Deputy Mayor Brown?
Good, I'll pass, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Okay, and I just had two things to report on. Last Friday night, I attended the Bergen County 200 Club dinner. It was their 29th dinner, and they had to change the venue. They had it at the Madison Club in Riverside rather than Marion. Next year's going to be their 30th, so they'll probably have to go back to Marion because they'll probably have a much bigger crowd. For those of you who don't know, the 200 Club supports police, fire, EMS, and God forbid if one of those members of those organizations was to die in the line of duty, the 200 Club provides benefits to the family. Fortunately, it doesn't happen that often, but it's a club that does a lot of good. Also on Saturday night, and I did see Committeeman Lee and his wife there, attended the fire department's awards dinner. And for the first time in a long time, since I've been involved, Rudy was not the number one firefighter to get out. But in his defense, he did have 148 calls last year, and that was in a 4-month period. So if you times that, and that's because of his health issue, not to embarrass you, Rudy, but you do a tremendous job, and you've always been at the top. And I think if you times that by 4, by that number, 148 by 3, it supersedes anyone else that was out there. So in my book, you're still at the top.
Wait a minute. No, you're not.
He had 148 in 4 months. You only had 126 for a whole 12 months. You have no room to go. But it was good to see everyone out having a good time. They had a disc jockey, and everybody had a great time. Other than that, we're gonna.
I think I'm ready.
Bite the apple?
I think I'm ready. I just want to say thank you for the invitation to the Firehouse dinner. I don't really want to talk about calls and who did what. I don't want to Mayor Barton took care of that, so, but thank you for the invite to the dinner, and I was glad the opportunity to be able to come to dinner. One of the things that I did pay a little bit of attention to in the packets that I got on Friday was the working copy of the budget from February 7th from Rodney and from Doug. And I guess what I really want to understand is what our game plan is in terms of the budget, because I think ideally we want to try to have this introduced at our second meeting in March. That's kind of where we aim for. If not the end of March, the very first meeting in April. And so what I want to understand is what our game plan is for introducing this and how we're going to take the information that Rodney's presented us and reviewing it. That's one thing for us to review it, but what I want to really understand is, are we going to have an opportunity for the public to comment on the budget prior to the introduction?
Yes.
Okay.
So
What's our game plan for that?
So, and that's the purpose of the workshop, is for us to sit at the table and go line by line through that budget with Rodney. And at the last workshop, we did ask Rodney for a time frame and a schedule. Rodney, you want to repeat your schedule, what you would like to see us accomplish?
Well, basically, I would assume we'll get state aid numbers mid-March. So at that point, they'll want you to introduce at your next meeting, if possible. So that would make the second meeting of March, your regular meeting in March, being when we could introduce. But as I said at the workshop meeting, the committee as a whole should be on board with what is in the budget then, as opposed to at the public hearing of the actual budget after it's been introduced. It will reduce the amount of time that it takes to adopt a budget. You won't have to re-advertise if you decide to amend the budget after you've introduced, things like that. Because once you change a line item by a certain percentage, that line item's got to be re-advertised. So that delays it for a whole other month. So, yes, at the next workshop, basically it was given out to you so that you could go through it, develop your questions as a committee, and we can discuss it from there.
Does the public have this?
It was in the packet that was given out at the workshop.
Perfect, okay. At the last workshop. Excellent. So the public has this as well as we do, and we'll be able to comment at the workshop meeting.
If the committee decides to take those comments from the committee, yes.
So we're planning
Or being from the public.
And that's the game plan. Okay, cool. All right, great. Rodney, thanks for putting this together.
No problem.
I was really interested in looking at this one. I got my back.
Okay. Yeah, give more? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Was I done?
No, good.
I haven't been here for 2 meetings, Joe. I mean, come on. Sammy asked me when I came in how my meeting with Verizon went. We sent a letter out probably about the end of December, beginning of January, to update the public on the discussions we're having with Verizon. And I met with representatives from the BPU on Wednesday of last week. And it was members of the BPU staff. There were 4 folks from Verizon there, myself, and Rate Council. And I don't want to comment a lot about the details of the meeting, only because it's still kind of moving. But I should be able to know a little bit more this week in terms of the exact plan for Tabernacle. But I can comfortably say to you that FiOS is coming to Tabernacle, which I've talked about before, but it was clearly defined on Wednesday that it is coming. It's a matter of how much of Tabernacle's getting FiOS. It could be anywhere from 900 homes that they had indicated to us back in December, and it could be the entire municipality. But that's a decision that's going to be between BPU and Verizon at this point. But it was a very productive discussion. But as things continue to progress, I'll continue to update. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Public comments. Please come forward, state your name, address, and we look forward to your comments. Mr. Brooks.
Ann Brooks was good evening. regarding the budget and the copy that was distributed at the last meeting, that copy is simply unreadable. I'd like to think that my eyes would be able to handle it, but it's so minute. So I don't know what copy that you have in your hands, Mr. Lee, but it certainly wasn't the copy that was distributed. It was really a diminutive copy, so I'm wondering if...
Give one that size? Possible you have? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably 5 point, 6 point, I mean, it was almost impossible to read any of the line items. So I'm wondering, is that copy that Mr. Lee was holding up available to the public?
It's on the website.
It's on the website, but no printed copies. So if a person doesn't have access to a website, can they come to town hall and pick up a copy?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Or even if they do have access but still want a hard copy, that hard copy is available.
No problem.
Great, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Anyone else from the public? Jason?
Jason Leto with Worship Court. This is my first meeting of the year, so congratulations, Mr. Moore, on your election.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, congratulations on your postings. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for keeping true to your word last year about not progressing the talks about the rescue ordinance until the contract was finalized. I did get a chance to read through the agreement, through the contract that's on the website, and I am actually quite happy with what's in there. I think it does recognize the value and quality of service that the rescue squad provides. And I think it does give the township a lot of good visibility as far as calls and a lot of other types of information that you've seen in the past that you do want access to. A few years ago, Mr. Yates asked me if I would be in support of a contract between the township and the rescue squad, and something like that I do like. And I commend Mr. Moore and his ability to help get something like that resolved, and I commend both the township and the rescue squad for working together to get to that. But as an extension of that, I do want to caution the township on what you do with some of the information you received from the rescue squad and the fire company both. Mr. Mayor, with your interest in that 200 Club that you mentioned, you would be particularly interested in this. The first agenda of the year, you guys published the full roster of both the rescue squad and fire company. Ever since 9/11, if you watch the news, they've been talking about how first responders are increasingly in the crosshairs of malicious actors. By publishing that information, now, I don't know, for example, if you're required to provide that information if somebody were to submit an open request, but to overtly publish it like that, I think you've put a crosshairs on the backs of the volunteers. Now, whether, for example, the fire company and the rescue squad want to publish their officers and or members on their websites, that's on them to assume the responsibility. But I think for you to just put it out there like that, I think it's irresponsible, and I urge you to not do it that way again in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, it was Mr. Yates who made the motion that we not change that ordinance, and I was just one of the majority votes that carried that.
Understood, but at the last meeting I was at, I asked you if you would be talking about this, and you said no, and you could chew that, so thank you.
Mr. Callahan,
Yeah, Mike Callahan, Moore Road West.
come up here and speak up so we can get you on
So I
tape.
have to get close.
More stuff?
A heck of a lot of surveying all over my street. You know anything about what's going on?
I suspect it's, are you talking about flags for
Yeah.
markouts?
Yeah.
I suspect that some of your neighbors are getting gas and we're digging in the street.
I
No, we
I may be able to answer
Okay,
that. I'm
good.
not 100% certain,
Yeah.
but I know the property not too far behind you was just sold, for what I hear, to one of the state agencies. I'm not sure. I guess it's Mark Simons's, I believe, got sold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Mark-
That's probably what it is, but I'm shooting out the dark here a little bit, but I think that's probably a good suspicion.
Okay.
So Mike, are they yellow and red flags, little flags?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's probably markout, right? The one thing I know-
It's marked out, so there could be, you and your neighbor could be doing something construction-wise, any one of your neighbors.
I don't know if they sold that land, made it state, and they had it there. Yes or no?
I understand. I knew Mark Simons well before he passed away. My name is Bob Lowe, and I live on Hawkins Road. I understand he was in the process of selling before he passed on to Green Acres. And I seen the Green Acres crew surveying down there. I live a half a mile from where he's talking about. So I can't confirm it's 100%, but it's been brought to my attention. Green Acres bought the orange flags that he's talking about one corner past this house was the end of Mark Simons' property. So for what that's worth, that's the best I can elaborate on.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, so if they're not survey stakes, Mike, and they're the little steel flags, anytime you dig in the state of New Jersey, if you want to put a tree, any digging goes in the ground, you have to call the 1-800 number, and the utilities have to come out and mark where their facilities are.
Okay. I just follow that stuff along. All right.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion. And with that, we're going to go into closed session. Peter, you want to?
I invite a motion to go into executive session and discuss the ongoing litigation in Brooks versus Tabernacle Township, BRL 10481.
Second.
All in favor? Do we get a roll call, or you want to?
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, then we may or may not take action when we come out of executive session. We want to stay here. Executive session will be held in the first.
Been working a lot this week.
Should have got my computer before you guys got in there. I could have did some work.
You can bounce the federal budget.
Got a 12-year-old son.
That's what you're trying to hold the environment center.
They did.
One of the young girls that introduced us to a nice looking young lady. I was the one to say yes.
Ask her who that was.
Sign in, I don't need to be down there to do it.
We still have Mrs. Brown?
Who's missing? Oh.
Yes, Mrs. Brown, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Yes, you did.
Did you get tired?
No, I'm not winning at all.
Are we in open session now, or?
We're back in open session. Any other business to come before the committee? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Aye. Hold on.
Lee and
Lee
Brown.
Brown, yes,
Brown,
Scott.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
You'll make sure I get those checks or Sam City.
You, George.
Yes.
We'll figure out which one they are, and we'll get to it. I don't know whether Sam will bring them tonight, or we'll get them to you tomorrow.
Did they sign them?
We can find it.
How are you?
Okay.
I'm sorry.